Hi. Um, just going to try and eat my sweet corn. Hopefully, I won't have poked in my teeth all evening. The cat right here. See you in a minute. Doing that, and the only thing if we go on for too long, we're probably going to fill up my computer, and that means we'll suddenly get completely foisted off. Now, all good fires, as you start with a match, so it's ironic that I don't have one of those. So I'll have to go and get one. Swami, I don't know how this works, but I just click on you. You become front and center. I'm going to tip off stage right and get an instrument of fire.
Okay. Yeah. Get your house warm. Yeah. So, can everyone else see and hear me? Thumbs up, all that kind of stuff. Oh, wonderful. Okay, I'm just gonna. So this is just kind of a spur of the moment, sort of chin wag. We're just gonna let it fly.
Yeah. Well, I think.
Yeah, spontaneity.
If we take the theme of the present being the ultimate present, and work from there, and I think it's very easy to get into a state of presence. I'm not completely here just yet, but with some deep breathing, for example, and it's all about the heart.
Well, I just went and did my exercises.
Great. Well, it's all about the heart.
I ran up to my squirrel house and back.
Oh, good for you. Well, listen, I've got my lighter, so I'm going to retreat somewhat, and I think that might help because then my volume will naturally go down a little bit, and we shall continue because this is called Fireside. Let's face it, we do need some fire involved. So here we go.
Yes.
How about this?
Yes. So light your stove. Yeah, get that going. Your sound, Thornton, is a bit tin canny echo, but we'll work with it.
Yeah. It's that we're actually experiencing a very big snowstorm in Colorado just now, and we're completely off grid.
Oh yeah.
So if there's too much snow on the dish, it's like, you have snow on a television you have snow on the dish.
Go out and shake the dish.
Yeah, I have a brush out there so I can reach it and bang it. It's actually an issue, and I should have to go and do that later. I do have to step in from time to time to add delights. I can see a lady in Australia just joining. So the fire's lit.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you're ever going to see any flames. Maybe you'll see them in my face, the glow. But this is an important part of our life. I'll have to.
Oh, there we go. There's another one.
I got my fire.
I'm going to get a lot of exercise today with all of this.
Hello, Elizabeth. You're sideways. There we are.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So
I got my wood stove going. Oh.
Perhaps we better both introduce ourselves, Champak, in a couple of minutes. I mean, who the hell are you?
Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I got activated when I was 9 years old, way back 1959. I was walking along this street, and all of a sudden this voice right behind my head is just screaming for me to run. Run, Michael, run. It was my birth name, man. So I took off like a rocket, and I hear these whips happening, and it's like, whoa. Nothing else happened, And so 2 blocks later, I turn around, like, what was that all about? So I go back up from across the street, maintaining a safe exit, like half a dozen escapes. Anyways, I'm standing there, I'm looking at the street corner, and there's these big, massive power lines that had broken, and they were laying on the ground. There's fire everywhere, right where I had been standing.
Wow.
And so I stood there and I thanked spirit realm. I automatically, I went, thank you, whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are. Thank you. Because I knew my life, it was a big intervention had happened. And then I said, you are welcome in my life. Shazam. And this is where the Christians are always talking about, have you invited Jesus into your life? And so in the Dracula movies, so on and so forth, Dracula's outside the window and he's tapping on the window, and the maiden has to get up and open the window and invite the vampire in. Okay? Not that I'm saying these guys were vampires, but there's this whole big thing about, inviting spirit realm connection, inviting that in to be active in our life.
Wow, that's so.
And then my life has not changed. Well, go ahead.
No, I mean, I suddenly went off on a complete tangent in my mind. I was thinking about
15.
Oh, I'm going to have to
So no go,
microphone.
no go.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to do some muting here because I think.
Yeah, but apart from that,
Yeah, there we go. I think everybody else is muted except you and I.
I was just going to mention.
So what that did is that
Sorry.
that set me on this course, that I had to understand what was this all about, and so I've met many great teachers and so on and so forth, and trying to fathom what it is, and I've had a whole series of these things, like a guy sticks a gun in my guts and he goes flying backwards 20 feet through the air, all that kind of stuff,
So you're talking about Siddhic
wow.
powers. You're talking about Siddhic powers because, or perhaps from an Oriental perspective, a kind of kung fu gift with your ability to direct and even subconsciously direct energy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't doubt that for a minute. I mean, there is the odd video, isn't there, out there where you see a kind of yogic flying, and it's just irrefutable. The guy just takes off. Or, there's a car accident happening and some guy puts his hand up and this thing kind of, the car goes backwards like by a magnet, a wrong pole magnet. So yeah, one area perhaps we overlapped was in Pune.
What was that last word? One area overlap was in what?
I noticed from time to time you post about Osho and pranic healing, and I spent quite a lot of time myself working in a research lab in Pune. So I think somewhere along the line we have that kind of spiritual supermarket frequency, where people were sort of unashamedly open to having, a sort of Kundalini experience. I think that's what we call it now.
Yeah. So it's like we have this birthright, so what I'm really focusing on is how to entitle people to really activate their birthrights. That's why I'm a really big promoter of digestive enzymes and Lugol solution iodine, and these are a couple of topics that, I answer just about 80% of all the, help me questions with, do a search on digestive enzymes, do a search on iodine, and iodine is rocket fuel for the pineal gland, and it's food for, and the pineal gland is the root core central place of what they call the third eye, and in pranic healing they even went even further, and there's two chakras in the pranic healing system on the forehead. There's the ajna, which is right between the eyebrows, and then there's the forehead, which is up above, and one is intellect, intuition, and the other one is um, like intellect. And so like you see this when people are really thinking hard, what happens is their eyebrows knit together and then they really start thinking.
It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that,
You know?
Champak, because when I was in Hong Kong many years ago, doing a lot of work with children who were in the autistic spectrum,
Uh,
I realized what I was seeing in the
yes.
biofield images was that their biofield was creating a lens. So you have these glands, but you
Uh-huh.
still need, in the same way we have these
Yes.
carry-throughs, like seeing the world through rose-tinted spectacles. Well, that actually is, very common, energetic.
Yes.
It's sort of dysfunctional pineal and eye, biophotonic emission. So there's always a scientific answer now
Yes.
for these esoteric, kind of putative knowledge. And I think that's important because there's such a rampant attack on our, important bits. The pineal is, I like the way they say the calcification of the pineal gland. It's not calcification at all. It's a fluoridification. And, these things are all now crossroading for us to share the knowledge, show the science, provide the solution. And when you were talking earlier about, sort of showing up and taking responsibility for your awareness, it reminds me of this sort of tagline I've come up with, which is choose it, claim it, and own it. Because there's a sense that we've got to find this choice. We've got to claim this choice. And once it's there, we have to own it. Because when we own that thing, the sacred breath, the realization that the breath is the gearbox of life, when we own that stuff, we can trigger a cascade to, I call it optimization, but of course it's healing. It's a cascade of healing. And so when we come at it through all these different angles, I think we present our case sort of further than just lining up the ducks, which is so often, what's happening, because there's a piece missing. It's like, you've got to believe me, my pendulum, gives a 99% accuracy. Well, yeah, but the world view doesn't accept pendulitis. So, we have to use tools that are representative. And anyhow, so tell me a little bit more about pranic healing and you. Can you do that at a distance?
Oh yeah. And that's the thing of it is, I mean, it's like we've all had this experience where the phone is about to ring. It hasn't rung yet, but we're thinking of our friend, and then the phone rings and we know who it is before we even look at the phone or answer the phone. And so we've telepathically connected and linked. And so I've been working with a few people on developing this just by practice. And I had one friend that worked in a retail store as cashier at the front. And so she had to be there. That was her station. She had to be there, the whole work day. And she had telephones and all this kind of stuff. And so I just developed this simple exercise where I had a pager, and what I asked her is, every time you feel my presence, just dial my pager number and enter, 5683, something like that. It spells love, on the dial on the phone, and then just hang up, and so we were doing this like sometimes 20 times a day, and she was getting very, very good at it. And so I was telling some people at random on the beach, 30 miles away, about this, and they were going, "Oh yeah, interesting." I said, "Yeah, okay. Well, for example, here, I'll you know, I'll get her to do it." And I just sent this really, sweet energy, which is what we do in pranic healing, is we send energy to, and then that kind of feeds the body, So I just sent this energy to her, and I says it'll take about 3 minutes, because that's how long it takes for the pager message thing to cycle. So you watching your clock? Okay, good. And then 3 minutes, my pager goes off and it spells LOVE. It says, hey, there you go. And so so it was by repetition, like 20 times a day, doing things like that, and then so practice makes perfect.
Wonderful.
So
That reminds me of Rupert
the
Sheldrake.
more we do. Pardon me?
I said that reminds me of Rupert Sheldrake, who actually designed some quite sophisticated but also very simple studies with both cats and dogs, sort of using the most amazing resource of all, which is the general public, to be N to the power of 1 cases, so that, when, the dog knew that people were coming home, or the cat was going to the vet and it ran away. I mean, he also did that fabulous study with the African grey parrot, with a lady who had taught it quite a few words. I think it had a vocabulary of 900 words.
Yeah.
And so they put the lady in one room and the parrot in another lab in another building, and showed the lady images that were drawn by her at random out of manila envelopes. And in the other building, the parrot was really not what she could see in the images. So the parrot was seeing through her eyes, and because it could speak, it was able to tell the researchers, and it's a properly written up study. So I think we're touching on an interesting thing here, is that all of us are looking for consciousness like beans in a Heinz can. We're looking in a very narrow perspective. There's a lot of other creatures which give us insights, and so I think it's fascinating that we have this opportunity, where individuals are training in so many different modalities, becoming uniquely skilled, like yourself, can work at a distance and have got so many different strings in their bow to deal with all kinds of different aspects. And when you spoke about enzymes and then talk about distant healing, of course, it makes you realize what kind of repertoire is required to kind of attend to the modern family's requirements in the current age. And, I see the smart family as the catalysts for change in every community, because they're the ones that pick up the trash in the stream. I mean, it's not infinite. You just do it, and then, the whole place kind of raises up. And so I think that, that's why we're having revolution, Swami. The revolution we're having is that there are a small group of us all over the world enjoying this fairly relaxed fireside chat, but it reveals a much deeper potential for collaboration and for shared experience.
We're all lighthouses,
Yeah. Anyhow, so you're now whereabouts in the world?
Beacons. I'm in the west coast of British Columbia, about 100 miles north of Vancouver, and it's a rainforest here. So it's what we call the banana belt of Canada. So we've had 5 days of snow this winter, and it's been mostly 40 degrees. So and I live in a rainforest with a lot of cedar trees and so on and so forth. It's very beautiful here. But something you were talking earlier, you mentioned cats, and I really want to bring this up, is that in Scandinavia, there's this ancient practice back, before weather reports and electrification and industrialization age and all that kind of stuff, that when Buddy was going to go out and go fishing, before he left the house that morning, he first had to consult the family cat. Like it was mandatory. He had to sit down with the cat. And if the cat was cool, hey, okay, you can go. But if the cat was weird, like hissing and jumping and, and running around and bouncing off the walls, it's like, okay, buddy, you're not going fishing today. You're not leaving the house.
Wow, I like that.
And the reason for that is because cats, because of their eyesight and their perception and their these intense hunters, predators and stuff like that, they're hyper aware, and so they can often sense death that's going to happen to somebody. And so now we're seeing this a bit with dogs being able to smell cancer tumors on people. So they're using these dogs to diagnose this and so forth.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the cat would, the cat would tune into,
Yeah.
So
there's
so
lots.
we have these abilities.
There's lots of interactions. I mean, obviously we've got the sort of almost myth-like TV shows like Lassie, and I think isn't there Tonto the horse? I mean, there are these amazing creatures that seem to cross over. And it's interesting that only recently various governments have even recognized that other beings are conscious, so that their status can be protected, down all the way down to farm animals. I mean,
like India has recognized dolphins and whales.
Yeah, but I think New Zealand is the country that's the furthest ahead in that subject. But with no method to this madness, let's keep addressing this excitement of your journey from 9 years when you really were, you just had your first return. 9 years old, crikey, you haven't even discovered your own sexuality at that age. You're really in the sort of pith of innocence, but totally self-aware. And yet you were obviously aware that, you were able to have a communication with the spirit. I say it's a very narrow path, but it's wide enough for all of us. And I think, even today, my partner and I were talking about, how you really best process trauma. And it's not enough just to talk about it. You've got to write it down. You've got to get this stuff out and journal it, and, maybe in the fire, who knows? But I think there is a sense of new understanding that we don't, like in the old days, perhaps pranic healing and would be a case study in this, where you sort of almost do a psychic surgery, or you cut and paste out this sort of negative vibration in someone's
absolutely
face, and then you flick it into the salt. Whereas now,
that is a big part of pranic healing.
Yeah, whereas now more newer modalities are saying, that's great, surgery, remove a tumor. But because we're talking energy, new techniques are saying, no, don't cut and throw it out and let it fizzle in the salt. Actually digest it, repurpose it, recycle it, upcycle it. And then how do you do that? So I love the fact that there are these boundaries of healing that always, just in the last 30 years, witnessing the type of journey from hands-on 5 years of Reiki training to the kind of modalities which are operating at a distance. And like Body Talk, for example. Body Talk's so clever. It sets treatments
at
different times based on the meridian clock. and then you're how long for 3 weeks,
Yeah.
2 weeks, 14 days, 15 days, right? Okay, so there's some kind of communion with the innate, which I think is so interesting. The same way, someone who knocks you out, a hypnotist or a medical hypnotherapist, can tap and communicate with your subconscious. So,
Yeah. Yes. You're breaking up there. So, body talk. You mentioned that.
yeah.
A friend of mine has this daughter. I guess she's in her 40s now, but she got brain damaged at birth with the forceps when they were extracting her. They squeezed her head too much,
Right.
and so her brain, bruised, got damaged, and there was a lawsuit and everything like that, and so on and so forth, and yada yada yada. But the result is now, and so my friend asked me, could I help her out, because few people can talk to her, because she's very OCD, obsessive compulsive. I mean, just like fanatic on it, and she can't stop it. She can't, and so she has a hard time making decisions. So what I suggested to her was very simple technique of stand straight up, and then think of the question, and then watch how your body goes. Does your body want to lean into it, or does your body want to step back? Because if something is threatening to us, oftentimes what we'll do is automatically we'll want to step back. We'll want to step out of it, But if something is very attractive to us, what we want to do is we just want to get right in there. We just want to get closer and closer, So I was just, teaching her this, on real simple terms. And so this is how she makes her decisions now. And it's a tremendous help. And where I first kind of heard about this was in the 70s, where I was in a study group, and we were doing Carl Jung dream analysis. It was a 2-year study, and every once a week we met and had a 2-hour study group. And anyways, there was this one woman there that was her job was to order women's fashion accessories for a major department store, Hudson's Bay in Canada, kind of like Target in the United States. And so her job was to order these, like scarves and belts and buckles and this and that, gigas and fufaras and all that kind of stuff. Well, predicting what women want to wear, that's a tricky, choice. And also too, is what's needed is the manufacturer time of a whole year ahead. So here she is, she has to not only predict what women would like, but what they would like a year from now. So what she did was she used her left hand, because she was right-handed. Okay? And so when we look at our, examine our hands and fingers, our most dominant fingers are our thumb, forefinger, and then we have our pinky ring, little finger. That, and so of the 5 fingers, the 2 that have the least amount of programming is the middle finger and the ring finger. Okay, so now we shift over to our non-dominant hand. Out of the 10 fingers that have the least amount of programming is the middle finger and the ring finger. So what she would do is she would just get the order book, which has thousands and thousands and thousands of items in it, and she would just go down as a checklist. And so what she would do is she would first check in with her body, like pendulum, like body reading, so on and so forth.
Muscle testing, yeah.
And like muscle testing. Yeah, same thing. just having it express in a different location. And so she would start the day with, okay, it is raining outside. Okay, that's, and it's not raining outside. So that reaction there, that's a negative. It's sunny outside. Okay, so that flex, that means positive. So she would check in, what's positive, what's negative for today. Okay, fine, okay. And then she would just go down that list, one item after another, and just, wait for the signal from these two fingers.
It's
And
funny.
then she would check off the boxes accordingly. And then so her boss comes up to her one day, like the guy, the president in a corporation, he says, I don't know how you do it, but you are the most accurate person that we have ever had that is doing this. So whatever you're doing, just keep it up.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, that
It was
triggers
amazing.
that triggers so many stories, I'm sure, with all of us here. One that springs to mind,
Yeah.
obviously I'm a scientist working with technology. I'm not going to leap out and get this little 5-in-1 device, but you can use it to test fruit and vegetables, water, everything that people are selling you, whether it's organic or not.
Yeah.
Couple of $100. It looks like an iPhone, but you can stab
Yeah.
it into a banana. But obviously in the old days, you'd be in the farmer's market and you'd see the lady in purple dousing the melons. That's absolutely au rigueur. But with reflection to your particular story, I do remember having a brilliant interaction with a fabulous lady when we had our clinic in Devon. We ran a research center in Devon in the UK, which for many years was the only place with the university that had complementary medicine research. So we bought rather a substantial building down there and had quite a lot of scientists doing research. And I said to this lady, how did you hear about us? Because, we don't advertise. And she'd come from just a little bit farther away than you'd expect. And she said, oh, I doused the telephone directory. And, that's actually quite a pin drop moment, because you realize that although you may be, the spiritual bouncer at the cosmic nightclub, forever to stand in the doorway, there are plenty of people who actually are quite well versed with these different realms. And, I think that's juicy. Because, we now have tools to communicate. I think my most important contribution to the chakra science, and you started this off by speaking about the pineal gland and the stereoscopic abilities we get. Well, I was initiated for many years in an esoteric tradition called the Zoroastrian faith. Not as a Zoroastrian, but I studied their ancient philosophy, and they're pretty well versed in this stuff. And so, being in India as well, you've got a sort of combination of two different perspectives, and so you're always looking for, like, I guess it's like playing old maid. You're looking for the card you turned over before at a match, and we had lots of realizations that, in the Christian tradition, when they speak about the 7 deadly sins and the 7 heavenly virtues, they're actually just talking about the chakras. Because if you look up the colors of the deadly sins and the heavenly virtues, they're the same esoteric colors assigned to the different chakras. So then you go, wow, well, how does that work? Then we're beginning to learn about the relationship between this taboo bio weather, the human energy field, that's since they stopped being interested in investigating and researching the ethers, because suddenly there was now microscopes and biochemistry. It's like the whole world got sort of just boom. And this whole other really important aspect of health, well-being, consciousness just kind of got let rip to basically garden shed scientists, people like Killian and Oldsfield and Valerie Hunt, who, really never had a being, but were able to create amazing technologies which were suddenly now revealing this, elusive substance. And the thing that I find so ironic is that we're talking about plasma, which is the fourth state of matter, and just before I speak about chakras, I did want to speak to this sort of understanding of emergence. In the Western world, we think about the elements like, carbon, gold, and such, like oxygen. But in the Vedic tradition, the elements are immersive. And so out of the void, out of spirit, out of Akash emerges the second element, which is, air. Gee, we need air. That's okay. Out of this beautiful void, this, what they call dark matter, this unknown welling of intent and life, emerges air, and combined together, they make fire. Well, how's that? Fire, you need oxygen. That's just one of the
hydrogen and oxygen. Yeah.
Fire, you just need oxygen and a spark. Well, we know the spark's in the void, so we'll take the oxygen out of the air, and we can see how fire emerges from the air and from the Akash. And in the same way, water emerges from those other three elements. Water, which is just two invisible gases, which are
water is thick air.
With the chemistry, the heat of fire, and suddenly you have another element. And as we get to Earth and all the things that dwell upon this Earth, we realize that they're just a combination of these iterations, these revelations of elemental experience. So I wanted to say that because this is the surfboard we stand upon. We're standing on a ball, it's spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, and yet we feel still.
16,000.
How do we feel so still? How do we feel so still? And it's because of this gyroscopic, self-correcting bioplasmic jet system that we have called the chakras, and they're subconsciously doing this stuff all the time. And the lower three chakras match up with space, lower dimensions, 3 dimensions, and the heart chakra is time. So we have the space-time reality that we call, here we are in the Fireside, but actually it's just the lower 4 chakras that calibrate to deal with it. And so the higher 3 chakras is I call it the sports gearbox. And you were speaking about the pineal gland, but what's really important is that when we're studying distant healing, Champak, that happens beyond space and time, because it happens instantly, and they're 7,000 miles away in a different lab.
Instant, faster than electricity.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is that we need to be present, riding on this surfboard.
Faster than the speed of light.
Riding the wave of time, the heartbeat, recognizing, calibrating with time, so that we can then use this conscious equipment, which we know works beyond and above space and time. And so, for example, I can carry Potter back to 100 years and just make sure they never invented plastic. I'll do that shit, but you can too. And I think that's a very interesting, it's like a point, and they talk about it in science. It's the, you know what it's called? The point of singularity.
Singularity. Yeah. What was? Yeah. 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 And if we can influence that, and well, for example, we're in the psychic fields. One of the things of teleportation, bilocation. Okay, this happens quite frequently to people, and they don't realize it. Like they have lost something, like a favorite thing, that they had in their, and they can't find it. They can't find it, and so in psychometry, what happens is you sit with a reader and you hand them your wristwatch, you hand them your car keys, you hand them this, that, something that's on your body, your ring, whatever, and then they scan that. And Amy Williams here is she's developed this what she calls scanning games, which is a technique for developing, enhancing our scanning ability, and so she made it into just like a game sort of thing. It's quite amazing. And so anyway, so in psychometry, you can read something, what the person's house looks like, this, that, well, how many family members, et cetera, so on and so forth, just because of the energy that's locked into something. So when people lose these things that they're very, very attached to, oftentimes what'll happen is some period of time will go by, and then that thing will show up in an old coat that they know they haven't worn for a couple of years, or, and they're going through their closet and they go, "Oh, how did this get in there?"
Right.
Oh, well, don't question it, just
You're
accept.
You're speaking
And
about.
so we've like
You're
pulled
speaking.
it back to us.
You're speaking
And
about
that,
talismans, aren't you? Talismans.
well, in effect, it becomes, because it's something we have a lot of our energy invested into, and so long as nobody else interferes with that lost object, like nobody else has seen it or touched it, then it's still kind of in this kind of zone where we can possibly bilocate it.
Right. That
Like, for
that
example,
reminds me of the work that Hannah Kruger did. Do you know of her?
No, I don't think so. I don't like to say that word, no, but probably have come across. But
she very famously pioneered astral projection research. I think a lot of people who have had sensitivities to these worlds have come here to the
oh, very good. Okay.
Colorado Front Range,
Yeah.
and Anna Kruger, who has probably the best mail order herb business for body cleanses that I've ever come across, even better and up there with Premier Labs.
Oh, excellent. Wow. Oh, we have to get that on EME.
Yeah, Hannah Kroger. No, we already did a whole EME full day conference with different Hannah Kroger practitioners. But quite aside from her psychic ability to prescribe herbs and identify toxicity, she was doing a lot of this astral projection work. And unfortunately, one of her collaborators turned up in a cornfield about 1,000 miles away from Colorado, where they were doing the experiment. So from then on, they actually chose a little object to connect with, so that they could come back down the sacred thread, down the silver cord, safely. So it's interesting that we've got these different angles, if you like, different perspectives on this this kind of the tether to the string, so that we can trust this journeying, this shamanic journeying. And I think it's interesting that, for example, the Buddhist monks came to Burning Man to discourse with the groups that they could discourse with, to let them know how much their acid, mushroom, partying was disturbing the prayer realms of the monks in their monasteries in Tibet. So it's like this backflush that's going on in the other realms.
Disturbance in the force, that this, like they say in Star Wars.
Yeah, and it can just be a few K-holes. It can just be a few K-holes that do it. So I think it is important for us to recognize our individual responsibility to this collective kind of conscious
holding the space.
Yeah. So in terms of pranic healing, what real wonders have you experienced?
Oh my goodness. Well, okay. Here's a very interesting story that Master Choa at the first World Convention, Pranic Healing Convention, he brought these people up on stage, and these were surgeons, medical surgeons from Colombia,
right?
And they had been, because it's poverty there, the expenses, they were trying to reduce the expenses of the surgery, and one of the expenses is the anesthesia costs. Okay, so what they were working on very successfully was using 10% anesthesia and 90% pranic healing. You know, so give the patient just a little bit of this medicine, and then enhance that medicine capabilities with the pranic healing. So this is why when I recommend digestive enzymes, what I like to include on that is bless the enzymes.
Lovely.
You know, before you take them. You know, it's like
now, Champak,
because they're a kind of a living thing, and just give them simple instructions. Bless them with love.
Now we've got a delay. We've got a delay on this call, and it certainly challenges my market boy banter backwards and forwards, because I'm interrupting you when really I want you to let me do a sort of lobby one back at you. So let's see how it goes. But you remind me of the situation in Switzerland. You remind me of the situation in Switzerland, where there's a secret network of healers that are connected by phone to every single operating theater in all of the hospitals. Because like your doctors in Colombia, the surgeons in Switzerland have come to realize that it works. And when they're losing a client through medical process and through loss of blood, and things are looking really unsolvable, they will call up the 24-hour hotline where the network of healers are available, and they immediately, because they know where each operating theater is, they can really zone in on that table and do the needful
and tap into it.
Yeah, and of course, Switzerland, the country where all these big pharma companies are based. So this kind of stuff has to happen at grassroots. And I think this is the biggest message for safety in our sort of sustainable vision, is that, you really don't need to write a book, because you're going to get cramp signing it. And trees are innocent anyway. We just need to be big enough to have the, we just need to be big enough to have the ear of our local community. And then by resonance, the good stuff happens in the next village across the mountain by next year too anyway. If you suddenly got a better way to grow your grapes, sure as heck they'll be doing it. That's human nature. So, can we trip the lemmings we've become from this cliff called self-annihilation and extinction? Can we trip ourselves, this 1 degree trip into a new Eden? Can we you know, like David and Goliath, can we find that fulcrum point in time and space where, you know, the little guy gets to take out the Leviathan, the dinosaur, and, you know, we don't want to dress up in our armor like St. George and get barbecued by the dinosaur. Much better to ride on the other zoomy dinosaurs that are around.
Yeah.
And just watch them, you know, watch them take each other out. So, you know, what is the purpose of EME, for example? The purpose of EME is to support, to protect, and to promote energy medicine. So, you know, it's like you've got angels above you, you've got angels behind you, you've got angels in front of you, you've got angels beside you. What the fuck are you up to? Get on with it.
Yes. Yeah. Walk with the angels. Yeah. Yeah. And so, well, this is what happened to me when I was 9 years old, is I thanked them, and I invited them to be proactive in my life. I gave them permission to enter and operate through me. You know? And so, you know, it's like I made a contract with them.
Yeah.
Open-ended. And so they've been walking with me, you know, ever since. So back to this thing with what was going on with these doctors in Colombia there. Why Master Cho was introducing these guys is they got these while they were, you know, in Colombia there, they got this emergency call like you're talking about, a similar thing. And what the situation was is there was a kindergarten that was being held hostage. And it was being held ransom, all these little kids.
Mm.
Well, that was such an outrage because children are, my God, I mean, it's such a trespass.
Well, they're everything
You know?
everywhere.
It's one thing to do this with adults and stuff like, you know, but it was such a hot button thing that, oh no, you can't do this to children, you know? And so these group of people, they went, okay, we're in this kind of standoff because we got the place surrounded, but we can't get in there without risking the children. So somebody had the great idea of, well, let's get in touch with these pranic healer doctors and see if they can come up with something.
Nice.